What's shaking bacons? I was so excited to see this movie. I could not wait. I thought it was coming out last week, and then it turns out that was just the limited release, and it came out this week instead. So this review is technically like a week late, but that's just because I mixed up the dates in my head. This will be a non-spoilers review for the most part, and then at the end I'm going to tell you a few of my favorite lines, and I'll tell you like spoilers in advance so I don't inadvertently ruin something for you. I was so excited to see this movie because I thought it looked so promising. And I'm going to try and make this a quick review because the movie is actually kind of quick too. It is less than 2 hours, which I personally appreciate quite a bit. The Art of Self-Defense is a dark comedy written and directed by Riley Stearns. The story centers around Casey, who is a meek accountant who constantly finds himself getting belittled and not able to stand up for himself. He was almost beaten to death by a gang of bikers one night while getting dog food for his little dachshund. In order to defend himself and get his confidence back after he becomes incredibly scared from being terrorized, he decides to join a local karate dojo. He quickly finds himself sucked into what I think could probably only be described as the cult following of the dojo's sensei. Things start taking a very dark and violent turn that he has to rapidly come to grips with and then learn how to overcome. Right off the bat, go see this movie. It is worth seeing, it is fantastic, and it deserves support because it is a smaller film. In my opinion, this is one of the best movies that has come out so far this year. It is that good. And this is the first really dark comedy movie I have seen that I have deeply enjoyed since Little Miss Sunshine, and that came out a long time ago. It is very full of dark humor, and it has indie vibes. I don't even know if this is necessarily classified as an indie film, but it's very quirky and it almost has the same kind of vibes as like Napoleon Dynamite does. I can't really think of another way to explain this. It's like a dark, more adult version of Napoleon Dynamite. It's got that same kind of quirky, like slightly off-kilter humor to it where it's almost like the people are operating with their heads floating and like a little bit to the left. It's very, very funny. And there are certain touches that they take in this film that emphasize that. For example, the dialogue is deliberately very stilted and awkward. And it's hard to explain this in a review. If you see it, you'll know what I mean. But the way that they talk, they'll say things like, "I am leaving now. And I think he is a great boss." Just the way that they say things is slightly off, and it's deliberately done to make it a bit awkward, and it really adds to the entire movie. And in addition to that, or I should say coupled with that, is that there are no brand names in this film. There's like a 1990s vibe to it. You're getting the feel of a 90s era sort of technology and interactions that people are having, but they made everything very deliberately generic. So when he goes to buy his dog food, all of the bags on the shelf either say dog food or like puppy food or cat food. The stores have generic names. The karate dojo is literally just called karate. There's nothing that actually has any kind of tie-in with our world, which adds to the feeling that this is just slightly off-kilter, and I think that's a really good thing. Even like media-related things were generic, but slightly more personified. So for example, there's a men's magazine that shows up right in the beginning, and it shows the men's symbol with the arrow, and there's no actual title for the magazine. Radio announcements are kind of generic but very blunt. He is described as a 35-year-old dog owner instead of like an accountant or a 35-year-old man. Even his answering machine is slightly personified in a really interesting way. So where an answering machine from the 90s, for those of you who remember it like I do, would say, "No more messages," his answering machine says, "No one else left you a message." Or it'll say, "Please erase your messages." And it just sounds so exasperated overall with him. It just adds this little, they're like little sprinkles of humor that are just like thrown on top of the ice cream sundae that is this film, and I really like it. Oh, and the dark humor part is like the fudge on top. Now I want ice cream. Another great thing this movie has going for it, is no shoehorned romance in this film. There are some parts where you start to think that there might be, and there is not, thank God. Just some very interesting commentary that gets woven in based around a friendship that develops. And there is a bit of cringe in parts of the film. There are some weird scenes that happen once or twice, and as they began to unfold, the way that the movie sets it up, I think it gives you a deliberately creepy, almost sexual vibe. And it's to a point where you're like, oh, please don't let them be doing what I think they're doing. But they don't, and it's a relief. But during that experience, like you see some stuff and you're like, ooh, oh, I didn't expect to be seeing that in this movie. So there's a little bit of cringe to the film. Overall, though, the film is absolutely hilarious on all levels. There is a running belt gag throughout the movie that is top notch. It made me laugh every single time it came up. The humor throughout the film is well placed. It isn't forced. The acting from all parties was top notch. And the film does end in a way that is not predictable. There are two major twists in this movie. The first major twist is incredibly predictable. I called it within the first 5 to 10 minutes of the film. I leaned over to King Bacon and I was like, this is what's gonna happen. And he was like, oh yeah, you're right. And it did happen. But the second twist leading up into the ending is not predictable, which is really, really good because the ending fits the tone of the film. I was concerned that this movie would try and take itself a little too seriously and force some introspection about Casey's character and the things that happen to him and his relationship to karate and the sensei and the dojo. And they did not go there. They didn't start preaching moral values, and there's just instead this wonderful hybridization of Casey's personality and the experiences that he has in this movie, and the way he evolves through the film I think is just very enjoyable. I mean, the film overall is really enjoyable. So I promised you that I would keep this review short, and I am. My final rating for this film is, we have an overwhelming surplus of bacon with this movie. Again, I think this is one of the best movies that has come out so far this year. You should definitely go see it if it is in any theaters near you. I think it was playing in one theater in my state, so I managed to go see it. And tell me if you have seen this movie, what your favorite moments or lines were from this movie, because there is so many, honestly. It reminds me of the way I felt after I saw Napoleon Dynamite for the first time, where I just kept thinking about these funny lines and moments that I loved, and I can't wait to see this movie again, to be quite honest with you. So here are my favorite lines. Spoilers. I think one of my absolute favorite lines is when the sensei is talking to Casey, and they're talking about Anna. And he says, I've come to realize that her being a woman will prevent her from ever becoming a man. Like, yeah, no kidding. You think? And then my other favorite line, which is couched, because he loses his dog, and it's really sad. And then the vet is telling, he's like, it looks like a punch, but it wasn't a fist. And you realize with Casey, like, what happened, and it's funny at the same time. And then the guy says, well, he fought bravely, he was very strong. And Casey's just, like, visibly, horrendously distraught. And he goes, I tried not to coddle him. And I don't know why that part was so funny to me, but I loved that line. I enjoyed this movie so much. I must have said that, I don't know how many times I've said I enjoyed this movie in this review, but really you should go see it. Don't forget to tell me your favorite lines and moments from this film, and if you have a chance, I strongly encourage you to go check out The Art of Self-Defense because it is freaking hilarious. Anyway, I hope you're having an amazing summer so far, and I will catch you later, Bacons.